So, I'd like to review my Honda CB1100. This is the 2014 standard model, not the deluxe. I have made a few changes to it, which I will outline, but I have owned it for approximately 11,000 plus miles, and maybe about a year now. I use the bike to commute, I use it for day trips, I use it for longer vacations, usually camping. This is also the bike I take on pretty much every short errand I need to go on. I park it in front of my car in the parking lot, kind of like a tandem setup, so it's always easier to just hop on the bike rather than move it back out the car, move it back in front of my space, and then drive away in the car. Not worth it, especially when it's super nice out in Southern California. I think the bike ultimately looks very good. I think that Honda really nailed those retro looks. It's exactly why I got the bike. Would I like spokes? Yes. But I think these black alloys, they look fantastic. As you may be able to tell, I have changed the taillight a bit. I think the original stock taillight is a monstrosity. Yoshimura RS3 exhaust. SW Motec crash bars. Fantastic, by the way. My one concern is that if you want a replacement, it costs $5 less than buying a full set. I think that's stupid. On the commute, it's fine. It's a big bike. It's about 550 pounds wet, a little less than that, 540, and it's wide. It's not really designed with lane splitting in mind. However, I live in Southern California now, and this is the reality of the commute. I do it every day, and I have really no problems. I think the biggest thing I've done to negatively impact my lane splitting ability is to throw a giant top box on the back. It's really convenient though, so I wouldn't go back. That top box, in combination with the rear rack I put on there, I think I got the Kijima grab bars, with some rock straps or a cargo net, you can fit a ton of gear. Once you get it onto the open road, that's when the CB1100 really starts to come into its own. The CB1100 is not a sports bike. I know for a while I think Honda listed it as a sports bike as far as how you could find it on their website. That is an incorrect classification of bike. What I will say is that with almost 90 horsepower and about 66 pound-feet of torque, the bike can certainly move. It's also no slouch in the corners. You can easily eliminate all of those chicken strips if that's something you really care about. And I found that the fact that it's only oil cooled should give you no pause if this is a bike you're considering buying. I've never had an issue with overheating. I've been sitting in 100-degree traffic for 3-4 hours at a time, just sitting. I come from Boston. That traffic doesn't move. California traffic at least goes somewhere. I was truly worried about the bike. It was getting incredibly hot just sitting there, but the bike was unflappable. It gave me no issues. I kind of changed the oil afterwards just in case. I know the high temperature could give standard non-synthetic oils some shearing problems, but like I said, the bike held up perfectly, as one would expect from any kind of modern bike, which this is. The retro looks aside, I mean, it's fuel injected, no carbs, no ABS, but it's a new bike. And as such, you should expect new bike reliability despite the, I won't say antiquated, but minimalist technologies involved. But honestly, the effortless nature of that little four-banger you've got there encourages cruising more than flying. But if you happen to get up to the, I think it's like 108 mile an hour artificial limiter, I think you're at like 4,506th or something. I mean, it's really low. But if you happen to hit that speed limiter, the dual Nissan discs with, I think, 4 pistons up front each, those will stop you pretty quick too. Like I said, no ABS, so that front wheel will definitely lock up if you're a little too ham-fisted. That was a mistake I made very early on, getting used to this bike. Coming from the CB500 with approximately half the braking power or less, and ABS, it was quite an adjustment. But I like them. Although some people may complain that this bike isn't really the best at anything. I mean, it's not a sports bike, as mentioned. It's definitely not a touring bike with the 350-pound weight limit per Honda. But I think that's actually one of its best qualities in that it's sort of a jack of all trades. It does everything really well. You don't mind hopping on it just to run to the store, but you also have no hesitation in grabbing it for a 600-mile Death Valley road trip, for example. The standard seating position, it's a little cramped in the knees maybe. I think I mentioned I'm 5'10", so pretty average height, but I think those pegs are designed for a shorter rider. Having said that, I did that 600-mile road trip no problem. When you take a lot of motorcycle trips, what you learn is that it is necessary to take a great deal of breaks just to stretch, stop, relieve any sort of fatigue you might be getting on your neck just from blasting your face with the wind for the last hour or whatever. And this bike actually forces you to take a break because the fuel tank is so small. You get, I think it's 3.9 gallons, and I'm averaging about 43 miles a gallon, so you don't get a great deal of range there. I usually fill up around 120, 150 miles, and by that time I'm ready for a break anyway. So just a couple of things that I want to talk about before I actually sum up. As far as what I've done to the bike so far, the mirrors are non-original. These fold a little easier. That has come in handy lane splitting. I did mention the top box. It's fantastic. I have tried the M Go and a Best M. The Best M is, I think, from Georgia. These are both under $100 on Amazon, and while they're not GV quality necessarily, they are, it's waterproof. It keeps your shit in there. That's really all I want. They rattle around a little bit, but since I wear earplugs when I ride, I don't care. I added heated grips. I got the Oxford Touring heated grips. My problem with them is that the Touring compound, which is supposed to be the softer compound, it's about half an inch too short on either side. That drives me nuts, but they keep your hands hot, and they're reusable. It was relatively easy to install them. You just have to take the fuel tank off. The valve can be a bitch, but other than that, not a big deal. I also talked about the Yoshimura exhaust. That exhaust is a little lighter. It's about the same size. I mean, it's honestly pretty big for an aftermarket exhaust. I think it sounds pretty good. I wouldn't say it's the best sounding exhaust. I'm sure Akrapovic can make a better one, but I got it for like $320 on Revzilla. And I'm not interested in spending $1,000 on some Moriwaki Aero. Yoshimura makes a full race exhaust, which actually sounds really good. But again, $320, can't beat that. The aftermarket is really good for this bike. The aftermarket tends towards the high end. It's often just Japanese, so if you don't read Japanese, there are only a couple of options that you have. Both are okay, but pricey. There are a number of things people on the CB1100 forum have done, which I'm really interested in. I know people have figured out how to fit some somewhat knobby tires on there. I'm not sure if they ended up changing tire size to do so, because these are relatively non-standard as far as sport bike tires go. Some people have done an LED headlight setup with a Motodemic LED headlight in a Triumph headlight bucket. I guess that looks great, but it's also incredibly expensive. Those are very high quality LED headlights in a proper projector. It's not like you're just sticking one in a halogen reflector housing, but it's I think close to $400+ just for that whole setup. Maybe $5 with the Triumph bucket. So in summation, the Honda CB1100 standard, solid bike. I think you could use it as a beginner bike despite the incredible weight. It is a fat bike, but I think just because of the way that it handles its weight, the narrow front tire and that low center of gravity, they're both in concert, I think make a very rideable bike. The torque band is flat and wide. That progressive clutch is rather light and definitely user-friendly. Brakes are hard. They're very powerful, but that's a good thing. And if you get the deluxe version with the ABS, I would have absolutely no problem telling a beginner to just go crazy. You see something and just grab a fistful of those brakes. I probably never use more than 2 fingers, just out of fear of locking up that front brake, but with some management, it's definitely doable. The bike is great for short trips, to long trips. It'll do whatever you want it to do, and it'll do it well. I think it looks good. It's an old man magnet for sure. Every guy who stops you at the gas station to talk about his old CB1100 or his old Triumph, I mean, it's great, but after a while it does get kind of annoying. You get used to it. And despite how enamored I am of the bike, that doesn't mean there are no negative aspects to it. It's, like I said, heavy. The gas mileage is 43 is fine, but you're not getting great performance for that. So I would have liked to see a little bit more than that, or at least a bigger tank. I think you could definitely stand to have one. I think styling-wise, that's fine. The deluxe version, I think, has 4.5 gallons. And I just want a little more range. It's limited. And when you're going out into the desert and you're not really sure where the next fueling station is, that can be problematic. The aftermarket as well, like I said, tends toward the high end, very expensive. It is not, I wouldn't say limited, but one thing that pisses me off is that the turn signals are so far forward on the bike. For example, on the T120, they're right by that rear brake light. But on this one, they're a little far forward. So if you want saddlebags, a lot of them, hard cases, for example, need to be, the turn signals need to be relocated. And that's a pain. The touring grips, that's an issue with the Oxford, but it should have heated grips as an option from Honda that doesn't cost $350. That's just for the part, by the way. If you want to have a Honda dealer install them, that'll probably cost you $500, and that's insane for something that you can get and have installed in 20 minutes on Revzilla for $80. If they just fit, it would be perfect. Some little things I like about the bike: I think the dashboard looks awesome. It's very readable in both incredibly bright sunlight and at night. However, because it is super shiny, it will blind you pretty much every morning and every evening. The center stand is a great option. It's not even an option. It's standard on the bike. I love it. Honda replacement parts are pretty cheap. I think that's great. I mentioned that the crash bars are fantastic. I found that out when somebody decided to switch lanes without looking. Bike went down at about 25 miles an hour, and the damage was incredibly minimal. Well, the scratching was incredibly minimal. Turns out that with the handlebar fully bent, the handlebar slider will touch the ground, and the only other thing that will touch the ground is the dashboard. So my dashboard cracked and needed to be replaced. That happens to be one of the most expensive parts on the bike, and there is no way to put a slider on there to protect that. That was a pain in the ass. It's actually like a 5-minute job to replace, but the Honda dealer quoted me at $950 for the part and another couple hours of labor for whatever reason. But the part itself I got online, HondaPartsNation.com or something. It was $750 with shipping and tax. Totally fine. Not something I wanted to do, but it's definitely doable. I guess ultimately the question is, would I buy the bike again? And obviously, yes, I really would. I love the bike. I think the fact that you can really do anything except go off-road is really what sold me on the bike, because I am not just a single-minded rider, and I only have room for one bike. I don't take it to the track. If I did, I might choose something a little more modern, FC07, FC09, something like that. I did cross-shop it with the XSR 900. I looked at the 2 Triumphs, the Street Twin and the T120. I think the T120 is a fantastic bike, but for significantly more money, I don't think you're getting significantly more bike. Both have a ton of character, don't get me wrong. Anyway, if you're considering it, I definitely recommend trying it out.